Hi guys, we are here with our Peekaboo sun hat ready to finish up the brim section. If you haven't yet done the sides or the crown of your hat, you can check out those videos or get the free pattern in a crochet along on my website, ChristaCoDesign.com. So the first round we're going to start with is single crochets around. We have slip stitch to our chain space of our V-stitch from the previous round. Now I'm going to chain one, and this is my chain that counts as my chain space, and this is my chain that counts as the top of my double crochet. So I'm going to go into that and single crochet for my single crochet round. So I have my chain one and my single crochet. Now we are doing continuous rounds in this hat, so we've been marking them with our stitch markers to make sure we keep up with that. Okay, so now I'm just going to single crochet into the chain space and then single crochet into the next double crochet, and I will continue that pattern around. I'll have two double crochets next to each other, so single crochet into the next one. Next I have a chain space, single crochet into that, single crochet into the double crochet. I'll just continue single crocheting, and until I get all the way back around. I've got one in each chain space and one in each double crochet. So continue single crocheting for this round. Okay, so here I am on the last stitch of my first round of single crochets after all my V-stitches. And we are marking our first stitch because we're working continuously. So I'm going to pull that out. I'm also going to change colors here, and so I'm just going to pull that new color through my last stitch. Pull that tight and grab my new color. And for the next round, I'm going to be crocheting in the back loop only. So if you look at my first stitch, you have two loops on top. That's your front loop, that's your back loop. Front, back, front, back. So for this round, we're going into the back loop only. Here I'm skipping over my slip stitch in the back of my stitch, so those are not actual stitches. All right, so into the back loop, and this is going to close together to become our first stitch in our next round. So we're just going to single crochet into every single crochet, but we're only going into the back loop there. My little ball here. So there you can see the front loop is laying flat there in front. Just keep going around into the back loop until we get back around to our first stitch marker, our first stitch that's marked. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our back loop only single crochet round, and I am going to do my last one there in the back loop only. I have my marked stitch, which is the first. So now this round I am going to be increasing to make my brim come out. So that will be first a single crochet under both loops like normal. I'm also going to grab these tails from my color change, this one on the bottom, and be crocheting over those as well. Okay, so one single crochet in the first. The next I'm going to increase with two single crochets. 1, 2, and again I'm going into both loops now. I should mark my stitch there, 1, 2, 3. See how easily that blends together. Done that before. Okay, so then we'll follow that pattern. 1 in the next stitch. Just going over my tails here. I crochet over them anytime I can. There's less to weave in. And then 2 into the next. 1 and 2. So follow that pattern around. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets over and over until you get back to the beginning. Okay, that brings me to the last stitch, which is 2 single crochets in 1, and you can see how it's starting to flare out here just like we want for our brim. So I'm going to put my 2 single crochets in that last stitch, and that is my first stitch mark there. Actually, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to change colors again. I just had a little bit of this camel color. It's one of my favorite Lion Brand 24/7 cotton colors. And then I'm going to put the jade on, take off my stitch marker. So I pulled through my new color through my last stitch and then work over my tails so I don't have to weave some of those in. And this next round, we are just going to single crochet in each round. Actually, this next couple of rounds. And we will go as large or as small as we want. Again, we are doing continuous rounds, so no need to join here. We'll just start right in the next stitch and work over both these tails as I change color. And mark my first stitch. There we go. And I will continue to single crochet around. You stay out of the way here. Put my new color tail on top and my old color tail on bottom so that they don't show through as easily. So you can see there my color change. And so this has been enough of a flare for the brim from everyone who's made it so far. Some people have made their brim with many, many more rows or a few less rows to make it bigger or smaller. But the more rows you add, the floppier it will get as well, which may or may not be what you're looking for, just be aware. You can also add more increases to go wider, but again, it will get floppier. If you find it's curling or waving too much as is, you can play around with where you increase. On that last row, I have you increasing every other one, and that is what worked for the pattern when I made it, and that has worked for everyone so far. But different tensions, different yarns can cause, you know, things to work out a little differently. So if you have to add your increases every 3 single crochets or even every 1, then to get your desired look, then you can try that also. I haven't had anyone need to, but it could be. So as we go, you'll see it continues to flare out there, and it will just get bigger and bigger. It shouldn't wave or curl up too much. I know I crocheted my brim with a pretty tight tension on the adult hat I made. This one I'm not holding it as tight, mostly because I'm videoing this and we don't need anything to make it more challenging. But you know, keeping the stitches really tight and close together can help keep it more compact too, but that can also cause things to work out a little differently as well. So again, for the last rows, now you're just single crocheting all the way around until you get your brim as wide as you like. That brings us to the end of that second round of single crochets. So in our last stitch, and a single crochet, and then I'm just going to unclip the stitch marker and go right into that stitch for the next round of single crochets. Just wanted to show you the color change there. It will flatten out a little. You won't notice it as much as you go around. So we'll keep marking our stitches as we go around, our first stitches, and continue to increase the brim. You can see it's flaring nicely. It doesn't have too much wobble in it yet. Okay, so changing colors on the brim here where we have continuous rounds does not give you a smooth transition. which is not gonna bother me per se for this hat, but you might find it easier to do the slip stitch to the top of the first stitch of the round to have a better join for color changing. So to do that, I'm on my last stitch of this round. I already took out my stitch marker for my first stitch of the next. I'm gonna pull through my new color, and I'm just gonna pull down my first color to tighten it a little. And instead of just going into my first stitch of my next round, like I have been doing, I'm gonna chain one, and then I'm going to go into that stitch. Crochet over my tails again. So there you go. So now you'll have a slip stitch here, and when we get back around, we will slip stitch to the top of that first single crochet, which will make the join of these rounds smoother, and it'll line up your colors better. So if you plan on changing colors as you go through the brim section or any section where we've done continuous, you may want to go ahead and join with the slip stitch instead of continuous rounds so that your color changes are seamless and not so obvious. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my first one anyway, because that slip stitch can be confusing if you're not used to it, and since I've been doing continuous rounds, I might just keep going if I don't pay attention. So I'll show you how that looks when we get back around to that first stitch again. Okay, now I'm back to the first stitch, and here again I'm showing you the difference when you do the join with a slip stitch when you color change. Here's my color change when I did continuous rounds and just kept going. I didn't do anything different with the color. And this is the last stitch of my round, my last single crochet there. That's my slip. Now that's my first. So to the first, I am going to slip stitch there. So that's gonna pull the round together and join that color so it looks more continuous than our first option there. So now I have to chain one and single crochet in that same stitch to get started. And I can mark that and keep going around. Okay, the last thing we need to do is the invisible join on our last row here. And to do that, we're going to end with 2 slip stitches. 1, 2, and then you'll need to pull your yarn through, put down your hook, and pick up your yarn needle. You'll have to cut your yarn to do that, which I've already done. Thread your yarn needle, and then we are going to finish up with our invisible join. So in this next stitch over here, we're going to go under both loops and pull that through, that tail through. Okay, so we want this to be pulled through but not too tight. And we're going to come back around and go back into the stitch we came out of, right through the middle of the eye there, through the back loop. And we're essentially creating a false stitch here. So now we have 2 loops. To secure it, we're going to go down through the back of our stitch and pull that down. Again, we don't want to pull too tight, but that will secure it there. And that gives you a nice looking finished edge that avoids the bump of the just slip stitching and finishing off. You can hardly even tell. All right, so now I'm just going to weave in my ends and be all finished with my Peekaboo Sun hat. All right, and that concludes our Peekaboo Sun hat video tutorials. Hopefully you have loved this pattern as much as I have. Be sure to get the free pattern at ChristaCoDesign.com, and you can look up the Peekaboo Sun hat tutorials on YouTube for all the different parts to make your very own. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing your hats.